What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I am Alex, and I'm joined by an incredibly special guest. We're going to go by Matt here, but I'll introduce you as Hidden Machine. All of his info is going to be in the description. For those that do not know, this man is on top of it, or the Hidden Machine, I guess, persona, or the YouTube channel in general. You guys do an incredible, and that's how I found you, is to get ready for Alan Wake 2. I had to go back into the depths. We had to kind of look at the lore, and you're the guy who I found, and your stuff is unmatched, in my opinion. So once I reached out and we got talking, I was like, okay, this is going to work. So I've done this in the past. We kind of just have a spoiler discussion, and not necessarily a review, but just anything that kind of comes out at us. And I thought it'd be really good to have you here, and go back and forth on it. So Matt, how you doing? How'd you like the game? What's going on?
Hey, thanks for having me. Thank you for shouting out the channel and stuff, and the lore videos and everything. Yeah, I am very happy with the game. A lot went over my head that I'm trying to kind of decipher, but man, it was everything I wanted.
That was gonna be my follow-up question. Was it everything you wanted it to be?
Yeah, I mean, I expected there to be some cliffhangers and mysteries, because that's kind of like what the whole appeal of the first game was. I think the only reason people are talking about it 13 years later is because it leaves a lot unsaid, and it's a conversation starter. And I expected some of that, but I didn't expect things like, because right before this game launched, there was, I think in Entertainment Weekly, Sam Lake was interviewed, and he was like, oh, well, the short answer is Quantum Break and Max Payne are not in the Remedy connected universe. Yeah. And that kind of, pull quote was like really broadcasted pretty heavily across a lot of different channels. But then the other part of the quote was, he said something along the lines of, but we're making questions possible. And I didn't expect there to be so much blatant references and nods to Quantum Break and Max Payne in particular. Seeing those kind of like come full circle into the RCU was really exciting for me.
It was I compared Sam Lake to Tetsuya Nomura. I'm standing by that. Sam Lake liked that tweet, so I feel like that's true. This man just he gives and gives and gives, and he doesn't give everything all at the same time. I thought you were gonna say, when he said constantly that you don't have to have played anything else to, and I said in a review, I agree to an extent, but I really think you got, like, I've sent people to you. I said, watch this guy's videos, get into lore, get into story, because I feel like if you're not into this stuff, number one, if you're not into that kind of wacky stuff in general, this game is not going to, it's a good survival horror game, but so much of it is on the back of the lore. But also, I kind of call BS on Sam Lake on that one. I think that you do have to have played. You have to know. Saga helps a little because she's a little unknown to it. But I just feel like you need to have watched the story recap, at least, of the first game.
It's impossible for me to give an objective answer on that, because I'm so
well, look at you. I mean, look at what you do. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, I felt like they did a pretty good job still of having Saga be an analog for new players and new to the whole thing. And if anything, I think they did, obviously, I mean, it's so complicated. You having some familiarity really is the way to go, I think, regardless. But I think they did a really good job of just kind of like broaching every major topic in a way that gives you enough, kind of just a crash course. Like the FBC, that they're a shadowy arm of the government that does, the paranatural stuff. And there's definitely, Saga walks you through it, and she recap, and there's plenty of times in the game where Saga will catch herself up, and it's like us as kind of veterans, or maybe some more than others as they're playing, we're like, oh, we knew this back in Alan Wake 1, right? But she's catching people up that don't know. Alan, even sometimes he'll kind of just blurt out stuff where it's like, yeah, we know, but obviously he's saying it so I think they do a decent enough job. I think for maximum enjoyment, if this is your first Remedy game, God bless you. It's quite the one to jump into, I think. Yeah, and I do think a lot of people are going to jump in and kind of be overwhelmed, but thankfully there is like a whole wealth of information and resources out there. Like, you know, I got deeper into it due to other people kind of showing the way, and
like I
it's there
said, for
if you want
Kingdom
it.
Hearts, like people play Kingdom Hearts games.
Yeah.
I've met, because I've covered Kingdom Hearts a ton. People play it for the Disney worlds. Like that's what a large amount of people say on Twitter and stuff. And it's like, I'll never understand it, but we're kind of living that again with Alan Wake, where you can play this game and it's a pretty good survival horror game. It's a game, you know, actually pretty good. But obviously, and just like Kingdom Hearts, there's so much more, you know, if you're willing to follow Sam Lake all the way through.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if people don't at least get curious about the rest if this is their first Remedy game.
Yeah.
I also think Control was a good intro for a lot of people. That seemed to bring a lot of new people on board. And if you are coming from Control specifically as your, you know, that's your first one, this is your second one, it's gonna be pretty satisfying to be like, oh man, it's all there.
Yeah. So I mean, like I've told you and my audience knows, like a lot of this is unplanned. I don't really have like a checklist. I just wanted to, you know, maybe we'll hit some key points of the like spoiler kind of story. We both talked about the game, you know, in a non-spoiler way. So I guess the ending, right, is one that probably jumps out pretty.
Yeah.
What did you think about that goddamn ending?
It wasn't what I expected. I did expect a little more, sort of a little bit more of an actual conclusion, especially where it just, you know, like the first part of the ending where I think Casey is just like, oh, is it over?
Yeah.
And then it just ends. I was like, oh, come on. That's so abrupt. But then having the message from Alice at the end and realizing that she'd been guiding Alan. I feel like Alice was possibly the one who was giving the messages to Rose, because Rose was like, oh, Alan, you were giving me all these messages, you were guiding me all the time. And
that's something
didn't remember that at all.
Because they never because they never concluded that little arc. The last time you see Rose and Alan directly tells her, you know, I did not send you those messages, so it had to have been somebody. That's what I was thinking too. And
so it like, knowing that she was in the dark place and was being kind of taking on like the role of the bright presence from the first game, like Thomas Zane's the diver's role, it puts everything else in a totally different context.
No, I agree. And even, I mean, this is full on spoilers, so I mean everybody has already been warned based off the title, but the whole final message in the game, you know, before the ending of her eliminating herself, let's say for YouTube purposes, my wife doesn't care, but she was like in the room. I looked at her, I was like, oh my, she died. And I couldn't, like, that was such a big thing. But even her pictures, I was hoping, in fact, I told my wife in that moment, I said, like, did she jump back in? So she's just in the dark place, like everything's okay, right? And turns out, thank God, you know.
That's what I was hoping. I was like, oh, wow, are they really going this dark with it? And, you know, I mean, they swerved on us, but that was pretty heavy.
Oh, it was, very. But you know what? It needed, as Alan says, somebody said, like it needed to happen. No, I think Alice said it, right? Everything needed to happen that way. So she had to, you know, have those messages. And so Alan could kind of, you know, continue to descend down.
Right.
Yeah, what a freak. Like that, just her eliminating herself, that was a big one. The ending, the bullet, you know, shooting. I thought if you were end the game like this, I swear to God, like where it's unsure, because I was like clenching saying Alan can't be dead. Like you're not, because my theory has always been like they're going to find a way to get him into Control 2. I think that you know, it's going to eventually meet and he'll be a bigger character in this connected universe with Jesse. But like the way it ended, I was like, well, I guess my long-standing theory is dead, you know?
It's so hard to say because every time Alan starts a new loop, he's checking his forehead for that bullet wound. But there's also the scene where he seems to shoot himself. In one of the writer's room scenes. And so either that end scene where Saga shoots him with the bullet of light or whatever, either that is the start of a new loop, or the other one is, but it's so hard to say.
Like I want to try to, like, because I feel like you can get so much deeper. I feel like if you don't want to get too deep, the way I would explain it, or the way that I want it to kind of unfold, is just all of that stuff like the new information is stuff that's
Mhm.
never happened. So when he says, it's not a loop, it's a spiral. It's literally they've never. But you're right with like that actually hurts my theory. The idea of touching his head is I wanted to believe, okay, well now you've done this Mr. Scratch part, and that's
Mhm.
never been done before. So now he is in like a deeper layer than what he was before. So he literally has succeeded in because it was never a loop, right? Like everything was to build to something else.
Right.
And that's what I want, but it's possible that's not the case. Sam Lake can mess with it.
Yeah, and then so it was also announced, I think just a few days ago, that they're adding New Game Plus with like
Yes.
alternate
Yeah,
narrative
like, oh
stuff.
my God.
And
Yeah.
I have, the first Alan Wake game when I first played it, I was really like, that's the ending. Like that's
Yeah.
it felt so abrupt. And then when I played the 2 DLC episodes, I got a little more kind of closure on it.
Yeah.
And understood, okay, so now he's on this other journey in this other realm. And then the same thing with Control. The ending to Control feels a little abrupt. And then when you play the 2 DLCs, like the foundation feels like the actual ending. Because, basically all these games seem to have like the hero, they never like go through everything and then wind up back where they started. They always like wind up in this totally new place.
Yeah.
And so that's, that happened in all of, like even in Max Payne, like Max started as just a regular guy, and then by the time he was done with the first game, he knew about all these secret societies and all like the everything behind the curtain of how the world really works.
Yeah.
He could never go back from that.
Right.
And all these characters get changed in a way. Jack Joyce and Quantum Break too, like he's seen the end of time, he's seen all these things. Like everybody winds up in a place that they could have never even conceived before this. So I'm assuming that Alan is ascending or descending into some new area of the dark place or of his own consciousness that we'll understand more of that when we get the full game.
Yeah. Which I'll again I'll take shots against it, but that's more of like a gaming industry issue. I've never been a fan of finishing the game on, but that's separate from like the lore and theory. I'm just not a fan of finishing it on DLCs. But yet again, the game does have an ending, right? It's just that it'll have more kind of closure, maybe, or more questions.
And it's hard too with these, like with this game in particular.
Yeah, these are different. These are different beasts, like entirely versus a normal game.
I don't want to hold it to the same standards only because they are telling like a serialized story that's going to take place through multiple games. And they've said a few years ago, like starting in 2023. In like an investor meeting, they said that their plan is to release a new game every year. So if what I think is going to happen, like I think by 2025 we'll see I probably Control 2.
Yeah.
But they also have the multiplayer games they're working on and everything. But I imagine it's not going to be the kind of thing where we get this kind of cliffhanger ending and then we have to wait a really long time for the next piece.
Yeah, and I kind of appreciate in the sense that I think there's still, even though the DLCs I think will move the needle somewhere, I appreciate that I do think they're going for Alan Wake 3. Like they want to make it very known that like this is going to continue, or they want it to continue. Doesn't mean it. I was actually telling somebody like I'm not super worried, but I'd love to see like sales figures because we know how the first game has struggled historically of all time to sell. So I really want this game to do well. And I think we're both doing everything we can to kind of spread a positive word about it. That's separate, but I just really want this game to do well because I do want an Alan Wake 3 at some point in my lifetime, which might happen.
Yeah, and especially if they're going to continue to partner with Epic, I know that Alan Wake Remastered didn't turn a profit.
Yep.
So that was kind of that was a big bomb for Epic as a publisher, kind of, footing the bill for that.
Yeah.
Not seeing any money back. Now, like, Alan Wake 2 has to, like, really perform if Epic's going to continue to take chances on the studio.
Yeah.
Because I understand, like, all the criticisms of Epic as a company and some of their practices, but also I think it's rare to find, like, a large AAA publisher that's totally benevolent and doesn't have any thing to complain about.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like Remedy has been trying to work toward self-publishing as an eventual goal, and it's hard for them to find places where they can get the money they need to make the games they want. And I think they do a really good job with limited resources. Like I never felt there's been other games where you repeat stages.
Oh yeah.
That I get kind of like tired of it by the third or fourth
Yeah.
time. But in Alan Wake 2, like I couldn't believe how well they used those same maps
Yeah.
3, 4, 5 times each throughout the game, and it never really felt
Yeah.
too samey. So I feel like they know how to work good within the constraints of a budget.
Yep.
But I'm hoping that this game does sell enough to
Yeah.
warrant the third one.
They're elite. They're honestly, and as time has gone, like I played Alan Wake when it first, maybe not like the first week or month, but I have memories of, and I rented it. I've told the story of me getting into it, but I went back all the way, to when it first came out, and I really respect Remedy, and like I keep saying with like Kingdom Hearts, like I'm into these kind of wacky, like these games that just ask so many questions, but also like they're so creative, and I think they're so talented. And it's like not just Alan Wake, not just do I want a third game, but I want this practice to be rewarded, right? And if it sells 400,000 units, that is not that is serious trouble, and you don't get to take these chances anymore, right? Like, and that's what happened in the past, with the first Alan Wake. So that's just what I get really worried about, that it is so whack. I mean, so many people are watching it on Twitch, right? There's a lot of people, but that doesn't mean people are buying it. So it's going to be interesting to see. I want to see them say it sold 1 million units. Like I want to see that like tomorrow, as soon as possible,
Yeah, for sure. I think that it's also definitely like a game of the year contender for a lot of places that are doing those sorts of, coverage, and even like the Game Awards or anything like that. So I know like they're in a good position to, if it doesn't like have a huge showing in the first week or two, I think there is room for the game to have continued success over the next 3 to 6 months. But also it is the kind of game, if you're watching it on Twitch, there's so much with the live action stuff, it is something that almost like I think you could watch a Let's Play and feel like you got it,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so the musical, I've been dying to talk to like literally anybody possible,
Yes.
because it is it's his 4th chapter. It's only the 4th, and there's many more after, but it feels like such a gigantic spoiler to mention it. Let's go on there. I really want to focus on, like, did your jaw drop? Like, what did you? Well, that was an epic level.
So like in one of the, I think it was in the Dark Place teaser, there was literally one frame where they showed him like this.
Yep,
and
I remember that.
Like, oh, that looks like choreography.
Yep.
And I was like, they wouldn't do an Alan Wake musical. Maybe they would, but it seemed so far-fetched. I was like, oh, it's probably misdirection. It probably looks like that. And then when it actually happened, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Even as it was happening and it kept going, I couldn't believe how involved it was with the different outfits and the just like everybody, Sam Lake and David Harewood, like all getting involved in the dancing.
Yep.
It's really good.
Yeah, like it was like I play guitar, so like it was rocking. Like it was amazing solo shredding, and it goes on and on, but it does not overstay its welcome. Like I kind of wanted more, and when you would reach the TV, right, to like enter the next phase of the chapter, I was hoping that it would just be like a set change, and it would keep, and it did multiple times, and then eventually ended. But it was like, just keep going. Like this is fun. It's recapping the first game at parts. Like it's epic. It's so good.
Yeah, it's a really, really, really awesome part. And I don't know. It was just like, it was also really cool to hear how they did it with the dynamic changes in the music, where I kind of got stuck at one part where I kind of like turned myself around.
Yeah.
And the music kept going, and then it changed in such a natural way when it hit the next point. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they just have the stems, and it's just like programmed in such a way that it loops.
I noticed
correctly,
that too with the guitar solos and how it would transition.
Yeah.
Perfect when you would reach a breaking point. It wasn't this jarring, like, okay, we have to switch songs. The way the guitar was, like the melody of it, it worked where you could just change it on a dime, and it felt like it was transitioning well. I noticed, because I got not even just in that level, man. I got lost in this entire freaking game. The Dark Place is dark, as the name suggests. Like, it's just very hard to see in it, and my eyes aren't that great, and so I got turned around so many freaking times in this game.
Yeah, I think the worst for me was in parts of the forest.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And then especially like in the just like the Cauldron Lake area, and also the hotel was really hard for me to navigate.
Yes. Yeah, me too. Me too. There was a couple of times where I wasn't sure with his scenes, the theater with the movie, right before the movie. I was like, what in God's name does it want me to do when you have to find where the suicide is? I think you can
Yes.
say, like, I was like, what, where in God's freaking name am I supposed to find this? Changing scenes, trying to and then actually that specific one where you're supposed to take the police car and you go
Yes.
behind the wall, and I had to look at a walkthrough. I could not figure out where to stand in that.
I totally got through that by accident.
Oh
I was
my
there
God.
for 20, 30 minutes.
I got through some by accident in this game. Yeah.
If I could have, I would have looked up a walkthrough, and that was another thing that kind of sucked for me having the game early. Was like,
yeah, you can't
I
look.
couldn't ask for help on anything really. Like there was a PR rep I guess I could have reached out to, but
Yeah.
you know what am I gonna say? Like, oh, I need a hint on how to get, you know?
Yeah. Yep. I've been worried about that with other. I think I got Plague Tale Requiem early, and that game I got it 2 weeks early, and that game is puzzle after puzzle, and I'm like awful. Like that is my weak spot in gaming. So me and my wife, I was like, I need your help, because I cannot do it. I'm not gonna ask them how you figure out. She did it. She's saying in the background she did it all. Yeah, but that's the gameplay part of it. I think Alan Wake it's very clever. Obviously there's lore kind of going on literally at all times, but just the scene changing, or Saga with the mind place profiling. I didn't even really think about the profiling part. I don't even think if they showed that in the kind of early footage and stuff, I never really paid attention to it.
Not in like a super clear way.
Yeah, I love the profiling of asking the questions, and you'd see them flash behind her. Like I was always looking forward, like whenever a new person would pop up, that was the first thing I would do. Like that was just a blast.
Yeah, it was really cool just to get like these new perspectives on the characters, and also kind of building the idea that she has this like level of clairvoyance, and can kind of like, you know, just peek into someone's psyche like that. And it almost seems like she doesn't even really understand it herself, like how she can do it.
Yeah,
and it's a great parallel to like Alan talking about how, you know, oh, I get these flashes too, and like I always just thought it was me just being inspired and having creative ideas, but he's actually pulling from real life.
Right.
But even that, like he says it pretty explicitly.
Yeah.
But one thing I'm trying to make sense of, maybe you have a take on this.
Yeah.
All of the Alex Casey echoes that Alan experiences in the Dark Place.
Yeah.
Those appear to be Alex Casey investigating the New York City murder cult around 2013.
Yeah.
Which is something that like an FBC document mentions.
Yep.
But at the same time, it sounds like he's interviewing people from Bright Falls, like Ed Booker and one of the Koskela brothers.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I can't tell which layer of reality he's on right there, if that's something that happened or not, or
that one got me. Like I was having a blast finding them. I try to like stare at the perfect angle to see like all the flashes, but I had no freaking clue. You know, I was trying to make sense of it too. But you're right, because like it very much is like the present time because of who he's interviewing, but he also mentions New York to Saga like in the car, and there's clearly like some time warp. Well, I mean, time warping is like a thing throughout the whole game, right? Like the big twist of Alan being Mr. Scratch, like that, but then also the clicker putting Alan, that was Alan, but it sent him there in the past. Which, by the way, I mean, if you think about it, I don't know if that actually works. Like, I don't even know what you'd have to be, what profession studies that stuff. But does that make sense? That because if she didn't do the clicker stuff, well, he already came back anyway. So you didn't have to do the click, but I guess you did because it was gonna happen anyway, right?
I'm trying so hard to make sense of that. I trust that they got it because
it's like a classic trope. Like it's like it was going to happen. Right. You could ask the question, well, what if she literally did not do the band and the clicker? But like the idea of that time travel cliche is like, well, she always was. She had to.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the core theme. Have you played Quantum Break?
I've like researched it, but I've never actually played it myself. But I know about it.
That's like discussing like the nuances of that is like a huge part of that game, and I know that Remedy like did the best they could to make the science make sense.
Yeah.
So I trust
Yeah.
that they did it in a way that's logical, but that's totally beyond me right now.
Yeah. Well, what'd you think of those big? So like the big twist, Alice is one, and we'll get to like the rest of the ending too. But so the big twist of like Alan kind of getting himself to become Mr. Scratch, the idea of Alan, the clicker, whole idea. What'd you think of those kind of moments in the game?
Yeah, I mean, there was so much kind of misdirection.
Yeah.
And the whole game is just about perspective. Like, you're looking at something, but you don't really know which angle you're looking at it
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
So, like, knowing that Scratch and Alan were kind of the same person, that's something I'm still like, my theory
Yeah.
right now, if it makes any sense, is just that when we first saw Scratch in the first game, they were two separate entities. Like, he looks right at him, they're
Right.
both there.
Yeah.
And then in American Nightmare, he kind of like defeats Scratch.
Yep.
And that to me makes it seem like Scratch kind of then like lost his physical form,
Yeah.
his Alan Wake double form, and that's where he became like this entity that can kind of shift into other bodies.
Yes. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I said even from like a gameplay perspective, it made a lot of sense to make survival horror to make him this kind of like jump scare fest. Like, how many times did he freaking jump scare? And he's always kind of there, but yeah, he's more of like a spirit that's able to kind of like flow and in possession, I guess, right? Like, that's what he's able to do now versus in the past. So yeah, no, I think you're on it. I think that's right.
And then at the end,
I have a whole thing I gotta ask you about the end. Let me ask you this, okay?
Yeah.
So oh my god. Okay, so they enter the dark place, right? The entire ending, including when Alan is writing the final chapter of Return, that is still in the dark place, correct? I think it has to be. He goes in, right? So
that's my basic understanding right now.
So my question is, I guess I should have seen it coming, I guess, with the whole like when he gets shot and then he wakes up. Like, my question, like, even with Saga, with her daughter, like, is she gone? Because isn't she still, I guess, to boil it down, is Saga still in the dark place? I think the answer has to be yes, right? Because she was in her mind place, which kind of transferred to Alan's writing room, but all still in the dark place. They never got out. Right, or unless maybe they did.
Saga and Casey are both in the writer's room in the final scene.
Correct. But that's in the dark place, not in like real life.
Right, but I don't think the writer's room exists in reality. Right? I mean, because it never.
And how'd she get out?
Never did.
She just opened the door. Or no, did she open? She opened the door, then she had to do the whole fountain, the shoebox thing, right?
But then the very final scene where she shoots Alan and then Casey's kind of getting up, like, that's all in the writer's room.
Right.
And so
outside of the dark. So they are out.
No, they can't be.
Right.
Because the writer's room is in the dark place. It doesn't exist outside of it, because it's the dark place, or the writer's room is supposed to be like the cabin from the first game.
Yes. Yeah.
But that cabin never existed.
Right.
It was like it was manifested by the dark presence to kind of trick Alan.
Yeah.
Because like when everyone in reality is looking for the cabin, it was gone.
Yeah.
And now it's
the attic of the manor, right? In this.
Right. Oh my God. No, I wasn't even considering that.
because he has to go up there and be let in. And I guess I get
you. I have no idea.
That's just what gets me about the ending is like she gets the call from her daughter first, right? Like the phone rings and it's her calling Saga, but then when Saga calls her, the phone just rings indefinitely. We don't know whether I assume she lost her daughter, even though she made it very clear to Alan that the daughter Logan, right? That she has to survive. But Alan kept saying, almost to the point of like, okay, we get it. They both have to make sacrifices. And Alan's sacrifice could be constantly getting shot and, left for dead and all that. But Saga, there's no consequence unless her consequence is still being in the dark place. But I feel like she may still lost Logan.
I think that's totally valid. And also, I've seen the theory kind of proposed that Alan knew that she had died, but kind of like shifted things to make her think that Logan was alive to give Saga something to fight for.
Oh my.
Like giving her that, and like the opening line, actually, I have my notes from my
Oh my god, I should have
my
taken notes.
playthrough here. He says something like, we might be better off like trying to just like live with that hope. I don't have the full quote here, but I wrote that like underline, live with that hope. Like it might be better to do that than to face the reality of the story.
Yeah.
It kind of made me think like, oh my god, is he like giving Saga this false hope?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know.
Like you had Tor and Odin, like they kept telling her like it's just the horror story, like see through it. And it's like I kind of trust that. Now they're insane, but I kind of trust it. Oh, which by the way, the whole time travel thing. Mm-hmm. So when they walk into the lake, that is them performing the musical, right? So they went back in time technically, or no? That's how I saw it. I saw them as going into it, and when they were searching for Saga, they ended up making the band and doing the musical that Alan sees in the 4th chapter. So they kind of went backwards in time. They failed. They also didn't find Saga. You know?
I never considered that, but I was like, how are the young versions of them in the dark place?
Yeah, that's how I read it as like time travel, and they went back. Because you get to keep them now. Also from just like, maybe Sam Lake likes them, right? And you just want to kind of keep them for future things. Now they're young. Now you can, they're trapped, so they're kind of like eternal in that way. So I feel like that's a clever way of kind of keeping them around for the 3rd game or DLC or whatever. Damn. But yeah, the Saga thing really just got me, where it's like, how dare you end on the phone call? Firstly, you mentioned the Alex Casey. How dare you end on the phone ringing? That in a good way, like that upset me. Where it's like, how could you? But then I was thinking, I was like, but yeah, they're still there. They never, none of that. Like Alan's dead, or at least you think, and then it's like, but they're not out yet, so that needs to be solved.
Right. It's so hard to say. So the one thing I do know is that they've mentioned that the Night Springs DLC focuses on other characters.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm assuming that we might play as Estevez or Casey or Tim Breaker or something.
Yeah.
But that the Lake House DLC is going to be more about Saga and Alan's stories intertwining again.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder if, we know the Lake House is a location that the FBC has set up in Cauldron Lake.
Yep.
I didn't find it to my second playthrough, but did you find like the gate where there's like the buzzer and...
No. No.
Okay. I totally missed this the first time around. But, in Control, like, there's a letter from Estevez saying, like, oh, we're at the lake house, and, like, we're having troubles with our monitoring equipment.
Yeah.
And then you see, I think it's Stephen Lynn is the engineer. He's working on the monitoring equipment.
Yeah.
So the FBC has an actual, like, headquarters, like a mobile headquarters there on the lake. But it's gated off with, like, a big, security gate. But there's a, like, a call buzzer there. And you can go to the thing, and they'll kind of just like, they don't really respond. You just kind of hear some like noise on the other end.
Yeah.
But they've established that like the lake house is an actual location there. And so now that like Estevez is kind of like invested in the story and invested in what happens to these people. Yeah. And if what I think is correct, like she's still not totally in touch with headquarters because of the lockdown.
Yeah.
There could be some sort of thing where like Estevez and her FBC resources are able to connect with Saga now and try to pull them out. Like I don't know. It really it leaves it open, but I am hoping that,
because I almost think Alan stays. I think because like, and that's what kind of, because my theory was always like, before we played the game, when we had no freaking idea what this game was going to lead us down, I just thought something would end up happening where they get him to be a bigger part, where they really connect him to Jesse, and I don't know, not like a cop duo kind of thing for like Control 2, but like where he could really do it. I feel like how Alice leaves off the mid-credit scene, I feel like it really, because she like throws everything out there, right? Where it's like, we're almost there, like, and it's like that very much sets up like the finale of this trip. Like that's how I read it. It's like, this is it. We got one more. We got to go deeper. We got to keep going, and this is going to be it. So I almost feel like you got to keep him in the dark place, and then maybe he'll die at the end of the 3rd or whatever ends up happening. But like that's still going to be so important for the 3rd game. So I almost feel like he's not going to leave. There's also questions. I got 2 characters to run by you: Mr. Door and then Thomas Zane. The most fascinating character, I think, Thomas Zane, in the entire. So Mr. Door is fascinating, obviously, because you have the connection maybe with Quantum Break and all that, but also that's left unresolved too, right? We talk about all these things that aren't finished. The last time Alan and him talk is not a nice conversation. He does say he's going to meet him again, but it's not going to be like swell, and that's it. So what'd you think of that?
So something I noticed on my second playthrough is there is a notebook you can find right there near the lake, and it's talking about like, oh, I woke up, I had the visions again, like I keep seeing these shapes, like these Hedron shapes, and they all look like the shapes from Control, like the same shapes that Dr. Darling was seeing before he kind of got taken away by Hedron and everything going on there. And it turns out that notebook is Tim Breaker's notes, and you find the same notes on his whiteboard later. So it makes me think that like there's something deeper. Like Alan is clearly going to have some confrontation with Door because it was, like you said, explicitly stated. But there's also like that thing with like his connection to Tim Breaker is so curious to me. It's a direct echo of those two characters and their relationships in Quantum Break. But like where it gets left off in that game is that, basically Shawn Ashmore's character doesn't know how to trust Hatch or Door or whoever. Like they don't know for sure what to make of them. And it's like knowing that Door already interacted with Jesse's brother, Dylan, in Control. It's like I feel like they're teasing us so hard. Like I feel like there's some huge revelation coming where Mr. Door is clearly like a much, much, much more powerful character. And also I've had people tell me this week they really strongly believe that Mr. Door is Saga's father.
Ooh.
And there's like a bunch of evidence to support it that I totally glossed over. But
oh wow.
Saga was born in 1989. Mr. Door appears to be the same person as this Bright Falls resident who disappeared in 1988 during an AWE.
Oh.
And there's all these like weird implications about him having this big battle with the Anderson brothers before he disappeared. And it's so unclear to me. It's got me like, I'm just stumped.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember. I should have wrote stuff down like you did. Like in that conversation with Alan, I'm trying to like remember literally anything of it. He says a specific sentence where he says like, either you're messing something up, or there was just one line that he said that I didn't explicitly kind of link it to Saga, but I did get the sense where he was kind of protective over her, where I got the sense that he was basically telling Alan, you're messing things up and you're ruining it for other people. You're hurting. Like, and he says I feel like if I saw the cutscene, he's not looking at him, like he's kind of turned and then he looks, and he says a line about maybe hurting or something like that. And that's the line that I thought, I wonder if he's talking about Saga, because Alan is kind of just ruining everything,
Right. And like if he is forcing Saga into this and Saga has to make a sacrifice, it's like, let's say Logan is alive in reality. It would make sense that, the sacrifice could be she has to lose her daughter, and that's something that Alan is kind of forcing on everyone. And
I just don't know what,
dark.
Because that's so, like I said, so explicitly said over and over. Like we're the heroes, and for all the good that we're gonna do here, like there has to be something which I like, by the way, because that's almost like, I almost look at it as like a subtle jab at like Hollywood and just other games where there's really no consequence. Like I took it as that in the moment, because Saga even says that so directly. But it's like, I don't really see her consequence in the ending where Alan gets freaking shot, and
right.
And you can go deeper in the lore in that, or you could just look at it at face value, like, oh, okay, he's screwed. Saga, what's her consequence? She didn't lose anything. So
she could lose Casey, she could lose Logan. Is
Casey that important to her though, for that big of a consequence?
It's hard to say. I mean, she,
they're in sync with the coffee thing.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Was, they are pretty close, but I just thought it has to be even her husband. But in the real reality, maybe they divorced, so he wouldn't even be all that important to her either. So like Logan's like the only thing.
I think you're right on with that. other stuff seems plausible, but not in the same way. There's so much weight to her losing her daughter, and it's like it's teased the whole time, and I don't know, but yeah, Mr. Door is hiding something, and he definitely has a deeper connection to everything going on. He might have a deeper connection to a lot of the stuff that we'll experience in Control 2 as well. It seems like
he could be like he could be like a Thanos kind of arc, of Remedy if they're looking for that. He could be.
I think that's very possible to be a very similar type of character. And they have talked about how like it would be sweet to eventually get to that sort of like end game level with everyone.
Yeah, I think they're going for it. And then okay, Thomas Zane. So I didn't make too many theory videos leading into it, but one I did I made on Thomas Zane, and I'm fascinated by this guy. That was some of the key highlights of even the first video I watched of you. I was trying to pay very close attention whenever you brought Thomas Zane up. I think that's just such a cool story, even what we kind of knew so far. And then I gotta be honest, I feel like it muddied the waters, maybe is like a negative. They like made it way more confusing, at least to me. Like I think I lost the plot. I like retroactively forgot things that you said in the video. Like I feel like they backtracked in terms of me understanding what in God's name is happening. So where do you stand? Like, who do you think Thomas Zane is? What in God's name do you think is happening after you've now played Alan Wake 2?
It's on the topic of Thomas Zane, I feel like I know less than I did before in a way.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
One thing I totally missed was, in the scene where they meet at the hotel room for the last time, Alan has the gun. And he's like, if you try anything on me, I'll shoot you.
Yes.
And then he shoots him.
Yes.
What I missed is that Thomas Zane survives that.
Right.
I didn't know that. So that already tainted
like you left the room after that end?
I left the room.
Oh,
I missed him coming back up, and
because it was the movie. Dialogue. It was the movie because he wakes up and he like someone yell, like he stands up and he's like good, or he says like good take, something like that. So it was part of them, which just makes it more confusing because what in God's name was happening there? Do you what do you think? Like, is he like, I feel like they almost went more where he is a filmmaker, but I'm always kind of confused on like his origin story anyway. Like,
Cynthia
who is
Weaver? She has like a diary entry or something where she says like, they're talking about Thomas being a filmmaker, but I know that's not true. I know he's a poet. I know that's not real. And like in my understanding of Alan Wake lore, like people who have been like closely affected by the dark presence or by the lake, are people who can see through the AWEs and the shifts in reality. That's how like the Anderson brothers are able to like hold on to reality even during an AWE. And presumably Cynthia Weaver has been in the same role. So like I kind of am inclined to believe her that the filmmaker version of Zane is not the original Zane.
Yeah. They also like just hurt my like I agree with you. They also just hurt like the diver, which I mean you've talked about, like technically not Thomas Zane, right? More of like other stuff, but like I have such kind of like good memories, and I look at him as such like a good guy and very helpful to Alan. In a way, he's very cryptic as well, but like he's got this bright kind of persona. This one, he's he's just weird. He's wild. You can't really trust him. He's making deals with Mr. Scratch, right? Like all of this, he's the villain. He's actually kind of a low-key villain at parts in this game. And it's like I think there's way more with him that they'll continue to kind of feed us as these games go. But and I'm not saying backtrack like in a huge negative way, like shame on Sam Lake, but I feel like they wanted to go a different direction purposely with his character in this.
Yeah. And it was kind of hinted at like over the course of like, well, one, the fact that he is so nonchalant about Mr. Scratch in the first game, he's like, don't worry about him. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, actually, you probably really should, because it's like the most like negative, evil version of yourself that could exist. You maybe should worry a little bit.
Yeah.
And then in the 2 DLC episodes for Alan Wake 1, he's like, he's more and more cryptic and seems more and more kind of like just a little bit more callous towards Alan, or at least not as caring as he was initially when he was really his guide.
Yeah.
And it's like, I began to like wonder just after replaying that, like, is he going to take more of an antagonistic role? And then here, it is more villainous in a way, but it's also like so hard to get a read on his intentions.
Yeah.
Because what's real? Because even the fact that like,
yeah,
he was like messing with Alan and then like got Alan upset to the point where he was ready to murder him and attempted to, you know, yeah, for all intents and purposes, did murder him. And then he's like, never mind, it's all good. You know, it's like, I don't know. It makes me wonder what his goals are. I don't even understand. Is he even trying to get out? Because everything he said about, oh, well, you know, I had to work with Scratch because you stopped writing and, you know, I had no other choice. I need to escape. It almost seems like, you know, by the end of that scene, like having kind of caught a recap of what happened after he jumps back out of back to life.
Yeah.
It's like, was anything he was just saying prior to that even real? Right. I don't know.
And it's also like, why is his goal necessarily to, like, you never really get that sense too hard in his lore to begin with. Like, you don't really know what his end goal is. Is his end goal literally to leave because that's kind of what they've introduced, but like you said, it's so cryptic and it's maybe not even him. Like, you don't even, what do you think to the
not even be him?
Yeah. What do you think to the theory of, because obviously there's a lot of theories with Thomas Zane of kind of who came first, who created who, if they're the same person, if he's his dad. Like, there's a couple different theories. Mm-hmm. And again, they do not make it any easier on us because Alan is called Tom throughout the entire game.
Yes.
So that certainly doesn't help because it only actually reinforces that he is Thomas Zane. But what do you think to that age-old theory? I like to believe it. And I mean, it's clear they're forcing it on us. Like, they really want you to question, are they the same? Because everybody calls him it, including Ati, which he has some knowledge that obviously is not being shared amongst the class. And he constantly, Tom, over and over. And Alan never at one point says, can you explain to me? Everybody in this game has to be dumb to an extent, right? Because they can never ask direct questions. Although he does. Remember, he says to Mr. Door, like, can anybody just give me a direct response? It's like, well, just ask direct questions, Alan, you know?
Right. It's something that, like, every time I think I have a theory that holds water, it's like, oh yeah, but this totally crushes that theory.
Right.
So
right.
I don't know. I mean, the one thing that I kind of like am looking to is the fact that Jesse also remembered the poet version of Thomas Zane, which makes me think that I really think the poet Zane was real. I think that if all the lore leading up to that is what I think it is, the real Thomas Zane is gone. And the Thomas Zane that we're seeing now is possibly just something Alan manifested in the dark place, because like he was writing, he was in the cabin, he saw like the photos of the diver, he saw Thomas Zane's books, and so like he was able to like kind of like create, he put Zane into the story, I think. But then when could Alan have written a character who then writes Alan into the story as well on this sort of like, you know, double level of Inception? That's something I'm still trying to make sense of, but where I'm kind of like headed, just like if I had to like pick a direction, I do think that the Zane that we see, like Tom Zane, the filmmaker in Alan Wake 2, I think is some part of Alan's own psyche.
Yeah, I think it has to be because it's him. It's literally live action.
It's also literally him. Yes.
Right? Yeah. And I think that's a subtle, not subtle way because there's more layers to it, but it's like what you're saying. It's a manifestation. It's taking what he's learned in the dark place, but he doesn't have kind of everything, but he makes this character and there's a little of him in it, and all that stuff kind of put together literally makes it live action him. And I think that's boiled down what it is. I think it has to be.
Yeah, but also I can't make sense of why do all the people who seem to be above the powers of the dark place and above the confusion, why do they all call him Tom?
Yeah.
That's what I don't understand.
Yep.
So And also, it seemed odd that, like, you know, Cynthia Weaver didn't think of him as Tom when she knew Tom as Zane in real life. You know, to my memory in the first game, she was never like, "Oh my God, it's Tom." You know, so what?
It became enjoyably annoying at a point where, like I said, like I just want him to ask one of these people, "Why are you calling me Tom?" And he never does, and it's just so nonchalant. He responds to people calling it. He'll answer back like in the next sentence. It's Tom, hey, and he'll say, "Well, can you help me find this?" Well, you didn't say no because it's Alan. I think he says it once. It's Alan. That's it.
The closest thing I remember is in the first game, like in one of the DLCs, he asks the diver, he's like, "So like that page with me finding the clicker, like, did you write that?" And he's like, "No."
Yep.
And he won't really give him a straight answer as to like where that page came from, but that's the other thing that makes me think like, well, you know, the one time he did directly ask, like, "Did you create me?" basically, Zane says no.
Yeah.
Which makes me think that Alan may have just been creating all these other things, because it even like he interacts with Casey in the dark place, but that's like, it's like he's manifesting that version of Casey from his novels.
Yeah.
But also he manifested Casey based on the real person named Casey, like he was seeing glimpses of his life. So it's like, was there just the actual poet Tom at some point, and then Alan just through his writing created this alternate version of him that's, you know, this whole twisted thing? I could go around in circles for days on it.
I mean, don't you find it like an aside? Isn't it kind of wild? And that's why I respect Sam Lake and the Tetsuya Nomura's of the world. Like, how do you craft something that makes just enough sense and is just sane enough that like you can talk about it with somebody else and you can have theory videos, but it's also literally never ending. Only Sam Lake knows the answer. Sometimes in the case of Tetsuya Nomura, I don't fully believe that they know the ending to their freaking story, but I'm going to give it to them in the moment. Isn't it kind of wild that like these things can exist where they're loops, but they're just deep, they're just sane? Because if it's too wacky, you can't talk about it. It would be laughed at, you know?
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where, because I do believe there is a logical answer to this, it's just a matter of deciphering it, and maybe also a matter of eventually getting enough information. That's kind of the only reason I'm willing to even entertain this kind of stuff, and I think why so many people have for so long, because like it's really incredible that someone can make a mystery, and also intentionally kind of like leave out part of the crucial information to kind of ensure that it will remain a mystery.
Right. They need to have the story, and they need to know exactly where to eliminate. Because if you eliminate the wrong thing, you may give the answer away, or there might not be enough to get close. Like it's so risky. Like similar stuff has happened in other media where it's kind of like people just kind of get sick of it, because it's like, all right, that's the thing with Kingdom Hearts, man. When you go too long, and I'm going to support Kingdom Hearts to the day I die, or Tetsuya Nomura, but you know, eventually after 20 plus years, 12 plus games, you got the mobile game for like eventually the leash starts to, you don't give them as much. And Sam Lake has a lot of slack right now, and I will continue to give him that. But Alan Wake 3 cannot be 13 years from now. Let me tell you that right now, because we need answers. My God. I'm not going to wait till then to get an answer.
No, and I know that it wasn't, you know, I mean, they started development on Alan Wake 2 initially, immediately after the first game launched. Yeah. So like they didn't, you know, I know it kind of seems like if you're like not someone who's up on all like the Remedy history, it's kind of like, okay, like you waited 13 years to do this thing and all this stuff. It's like,
like game development, they started in 2019, right? I'm pretty sure that's when they started like pre-development and all that. So it's not even that long. Like not only, you know, you mentioned this in the beginning, not only do they do great with a smaller budget, and they've said that, right? Smaller budget, their team is not the same size as a AAA team. So they do magic with like a small, but also they work fast. 4 years?
Yeah.
That's normally 5 for a game like this. So they're actually under the average of how long it would take.
But the initial, when they first pitched the sequel and they started writing and working on it, it was back in like 2011.
Yeah.
So like even in the first game, like I have like the book and the making of book, and they mention like, oh, there's a lot more about Thomas Zane that we didn't put into this game that we'll reveal in the near future. And
Wow.
it turned out that,
What a cliffhanger.
they didn't get a chance to do that for 13 years.
Yeah.
But I the only, so I'm just knowing that the intention was Alan Wake 2 will come out probably between like 2011 and 2014 was the initial plan.
Yeah.
I know that they didn't just
No, not
like
yeah.
I know they had a path for this kind of thing. I know they're not just like pulling it out of their asses.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. And there's the video of Sam Lake announcing, and he looks crushed. Like the guy,
Oh, yeah.
he can't fulfill what he wants to do. All right, final question I have for
Mhm.
you, and it's not even a major. Did you watch the movie? The full.
Oh yeah.
I did too, and it was long. It was longer than I thought it would be, but
I
at
kept
some
going like,
point,
oh, another scene?
yeah, at some point I actually like it goes on for so long and it's so
Mhm.
weird. And I try to get like a good seating view. Like, obviously you can't
Me
sit.
too.
You try to get like
Yes.
the perfect frame. But eventually I thought this is going on very long. But then I kind of convinced myself to say this might be like an hour and a half movie crammed in this freaking game. And it wasn't. But at some point I kind of convinced myself, what if this thing is a full feature length film built in? So what'd you think of I mean, Sam Lake carried it a lot. He tried,
Oh
he
yeah.
did his best acting. What'd you think of that wacky? Those are the moments I think that lose people. By the way, I think normal people see that and say that's what's maybe that's where you kind of get a little too wacky, which I understand. I get.
Well, also the fact that it's completely optional. You can just walk out of the
Yeah,
theater.
you can. You sure can.
So I do think hats off to Remedy for knowing, all right, we're gonna get a little masturbatory here, maybe go a
Yeah.
little bit too far down like the weirdo kind of
Yep.
path. But if you don't want to join us, there's the door, no consequences.
Yeah.
But I mean, I really dug it. I mean, it was goofy. It's clearly like them doing like their like David Lynch worship kind of stuff, like trying to do these like, yeah, just like it was a very classic experimental art house film, which
Yeah.
made sense for everything going on. I did enjoy it, and it made me want to see them do more,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
something more narrative driven, not something so experimental. But at the same time, it was just like trying to decipher how this all fits into the
That's what I was
story.
trying. And eventually, I'll be honest. Eventually, I just lost, and I said I'm gonna watch it, but I
Mhm.
have no clue. Because the beginning, I was like, okay, how does this connect? What layer of reality are we in? Who is it? Like, all those. And then eventually, it just becomes this is like 15 minutes long. I'm kind of like it's not zoomed in all the way, right? So you're still, with Alan. It's like I'll
Right.
watch it, but I've kind of given up now in terms of figuring out what you're actually doing with this movie.
Yeah, the only thing I kind of took from it was that like it is like an encapsulation of all the major themes of the game.
Yeah.
It's
But they
almost
do
like
the
this like,
ritual.
yeah,
So
there's
that's
like an
one.
abbreviated retelling of the whole thing
Yeah.
within that. Some of it's very like metaphorical, some of it's very like it's just super abbreviated, but it is kind of the whole game in that short film.
Yeah.
And so much of like Casey's investigation is surrounding that film, but then like Casey was in it and Ati was in it seemingly as
Yeah.
himself. Like they're talking about the bureau and everything, and
Yep.
I don't know. I'm like I'm only 2 chapters into my second playthrough. I'm hoping that after this playthrough, I'll do the new game plus stuff later on, and hopefully
Yeah.
get a better understanding. But I very impressed overall. But
Yeah.
like I don't. What the hell?
Well, I
have
think
no
it's
idea.
like, and again, like hats off. I'm not sucking up or anything. Like you're the guy I found. So YouTube helped you. YouTube's algorithm brought me to you. But I watched other people, and I think you freaking crush it. But to throw it out there, like this took years. Like these videos, you're the ultimate kind of lore one you made, which at that 100,000, that was like that was August, right? That you made it. So like we're talking years, multiple people have to kind of chime in. I think it's impossible for one or two people to figure out the entirety of the lore of Alan Wake. Just same thing with Kingdom Hearts. You cannot do it. Like you need
No.
a small little cult army to kind of have their 2 cents. So like you said, did you notice this? Oh, I didn't even see it in the game. Those things times 100. And that takes time. It's not going to be this year. It won't even be before the DLC comes out. It'll be, after that. So it's wild.
For sure. I mean, there's Sir Galahut runs a thing called the Remedy Mysteries on Reddit, which is like an amazing resource for anyone who wants to go deeper into this kind of stuff. And he's even kind of putting out the theory that it seems as if Remedy and Rockstar are creating a bit of a shared universe, which seems like a stretch, but at the same time, they have Rockstar worked on the first Max Payne game before they even bought the franchise.
Yeah.
They've been super tight, and they have like a good working relationship, and there's legs to that theory. And so like reading stuff like that, and there's all these other communities, like there's people in our Discord right now talking about it. Like there is like a group effort to deconstruct it.
Yeah.
But if it took, over a decade for like a general consensus on a lot of the lore of the first game to be decided on, who knows?
No, you're right. I think leading into this, with your help and with others, like I think there's a pretty good, you can follow along and you can watch a couple videos and you could get where we're at so far. But that took 10 plus years. 10 plus years. And so even, internet's faster and people I think maybe are even more invested, but probably 3, 4, 5 years until I feel like we would. And then Control 2 comes out and it'll probably just ruin it. Like it'll just.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the other thing I keep thinking is like, I want to make I want to get like a definitive theory out there. And then it's like, well, who knows? By the time I do that, is it going to be like kind of crushed by Control 2?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've gone an hour. I think we covered. Is there anything we missed? If not, we can wrap it up. Is there any spoiler?
I mean, there's so much to talk about. I guess the only thing I would say, just as a kind of final thought, is like it was really gratifying to see Remedy. We basically got like a third Max Payne plot in this game. Well, I guess a fourth, but we got like Remedy's version of Max Payne 3 essentially. Like, and they even like they put the music cues from Max Payne in there and stuff.
Yeah.
And then we also kind of got like a pseudo Quantum Break sequel as well in this, which is just like for all that to come together, and then to even have some very subtle nods to the lore of Death Rally, which I did not expect. They've always put like a Death Rally arcade cabinet or a poster in their games.
Yeah.
But there's even references to like the characters of Death Rally in this.
Yeah.
So it's really sick to see the whole thing come full circle and kind of just like have this major culmination of everything they've ever done all in one thing. Super impressive that it works.
Yeah, no, the fact that they made a survival horror game and they introduced Saga and they have the mind place and the scene changes, and that's very heavy gameplay. Mm-hmm. And then they take the opportunity to say, okay, well, we're going to do survival horror so we can make Mr. Scratch the psychological kind of nightmare, and how they do jump scares with like kind of the bleeding effect of the environment changing. And those are just like gameplay elements. That's just enjoying the game. Then they do the live action stuff and they say, why don't we just do a musical? Why don't we make a film, a 15-minute film, and then like you said, finishing their other games, finishing their other franchises, while also continuing this, while also leaving it open for like, it is unbelievable. And that's, honestly, that is why I love it. And I try to make that very clear in like my review, where it is not for everybody. And you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if this thing didn't sell 1 million, because I don't think there's all that. I think that's what makes it special. There's not 10 million people like us that play these games. There's just not.
Yeah, it's a niche thing.
Yeah.
It kind of has to be for it to work, because otherwise, if you start trying to satisfy too many people, you're going to water it down.
Right.
It's not trying to like sound like a gatekeeper or anything. It's just literally like it is kind of hard to get into sometimes, because it's so weird and so niche, and its whole thing it's doing. You can't please everyone. Even survival horror, it's like that genre has gotten like more of a resurgence in the last few years, but even that's been kind of like a niche genre outside of like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. Yep.
And this really, a lot of their ideas of survival, and I want to give them some credit, because I think the mind place and stuff, like a lot of that's really good. A lot of the functioning gameplay of movement shooting enemies is just ripped straight. It's just Resident Evil. That's all it is.
Inventory, everything. Yeah.
Yeah, which is fine because you might as well copy the thing that's working the best. And ultimately, you might attract some of those people that say, I'll try the game. I'm not into the lore, but I'll play. And that's, mentioning with Kingdom Hearts, like if you play those for the Disney world, what's that equivalent here? Maybe you just kind of want to be jump scared. Maybe you want to fight some of the enemies. And there's some cool boss fights. There's some cool things they do throughout the whole game. I don't know how much enjoyment you'd be. So much is lore. That's a tough thing. It's a tough blend, or it's a tough like balancing act, because it is so Sam Lake, it is so Remedy, but you want it to be playable. And I think they do a really good job when it is, but I don't know. It's an interesting game. Well, I appreciate you being here, man. And like I said in the beginning of the video, check out his channel, Hidden Machine. Does some incredible stuff, and I'm sure the next several years will be exciting to see what you put out on your channel. But thank you so much, man, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, guys, let us know in the comments what you think. Make sure you're subscribed to both channels, bell icon, all that jazz, and we'll see you on the next one.